Welcome to this lightning lesson on learning how to run a company with AI agents. I'm going to be telling you about my story, about where I started as a non-technical, a non-developer, about how I learned to use AI agents. I was thinking that it was something far beyond me. I have plenty of developer friends being a product manager, but they were using things that I just didn't think that I could do. And then I stumbled across a software solution that helped me put these things together, but it wasn't all roses right away. So I'm going to tell you about my story, about what's possible, and also show you what it looks like, how I ended up replacing a team of basically 20 people, the output of 20 people with 8 different agents. And I'm using my existing Claude subscription to do so, and not any extra money being going through and some sort of API. So here's what I wake up to every day. I've got an inbox that has all of the different items that my agents are all working on. Some things they're looking for my approval. I'm literally the board chairman of the entire board, and they're submitting things for my approval to be able to work on next. And then also some things they're just moving forward with. And this is now, you can see I'm on issue number 942. So I'm in the just about 1,000, right at 1,000 things that are happening over the past 8 weeks. So I've been doing this for about 8 weeks. I've been researching it beforehand and kind of wondering about it for a while, looking into it, but really getting moving now. So a matter of 1,000 different tasks being done in 8 weeks. And I get to wake up to 20 to 40 to 100 every morning, depending on how much proactivity and work that I want the team to do. So it's been a lot of fun. I tell you, the reason I'm sharing this is because of how much fun I'm having. At the same time, it's also making me more productive and driving my company forward. My company, if you're not aware, I went and became an independent founder of a company to where I'm an educator full time now. I used to run product businesses, product portfolios, and teach product managers on the side, teach founders and advise founders on companies and strategy. And then I went into doing education full time. So I teach on Maven, I teach corporate training courses, but mostly on how to think well in the age of AI. So things about strategy and influence. My main course is called The Influential PM. But so this is a diversion from that, it would seem like. But what I wanted to share is that even somebody like me can do this. And so I thought it'd be fun to be able to show you what I've been creating. All right, so here's where I started. What I thought about doing to begin with was I wanted a company full of AI agents and let it run while I slept. And eventually I got there, but that's not where it started. I wanted them to be thinking about planning, deciding what to do with the business before I even ask. I want them to be proactive, and then I want them to execute. Instead of me telling them exactly what to do, I want them to ship and produce actual work instead of just advising me on it or consulting me. And then I want them to get better every day in the same way that a human would, somebody that I want to hire on my team. Now, this is where I wanted things to go. And me, as a non-technical product manager, never coding before, how hard could it be? I've seen other people put these things together. Let's give it a go. But I hit a wall very, very soon on. What for the first 2 weeks in, all I was doing was going to this new solution that had 3 different AI agents that I created to start with. I created a CEO, a founding product strategist, and a founding engineer. And they worked when I told them what to do and I told them what their job was. But as soon as I stopped telling them what to do next, they wouldn't do any other work. And then I had to babysit every task to completion. And then when tasks potentially required multiple different agents with different specialties to work on the same thing, they weren't collaborating at all. So I was having to assign tasks to each individual, and then I would have to make sure that it did the work, and then it would stop, and then I'd have to be thinking about something else, and it'd be waiting for me to then move forward on each individual task. And this was frustrating for 2 weeks. And what I realized is I made 2 different mistakes. The first was I gave them no expectations. I trained them in the same way that I've been training like different Claude projects and different Claude sessions, or ChatGPT sessions and projects. So I moved everything over from ChatGPT to Claude for my own company a while back. Uh, and what I was using these agents as was the same thing. I would go and basically create a task, which was similar to a session. It had some memory of the role that the agent was supposed to play, but it really wasn't anything else other than, hey, this one's a product manager, this one's an engineer, this one's supposed to be CEO, which was really no real definition. So I trained them to be specialized, and then I just assigned them tasks. So that was one mistake. The second was, if I wanted them to get better, I was the only one that was teaching them. I was going to all the new Claude repositories on GitHub and finding new skills for them, all the ones that have somebody starred it 1,000 times. Oh, this one looks good for video generation. Oh, this one looks good for content writing. Oh, this one looks good for something else. And so I would go and pull those skills in, and I would give them to each agent and be like, go and download this stuff and use this. And what I found was I was constantly having to learn about domains that I wasn't in. So I had to learn about marketing. I had to learn about engineering, even though I'm not an engineer, and go and see what are the best tools that engineers need. Instead, I wasn't letting them be their own teachers as well. And this frustration was mounting, it was boiling over to where I was like, why are we even doing this whole agent thing when me and Claude Cowork and Claude Code were much more efficient and much more effective? It just didn't make any sense. And that's when I had a breakthrough. As I'm thinking through how to build these agents, I finally just ranted to the CEO agent. I was like, look, you're not doing your job at all. I'm having to do your job for you. And this is my literal rant. It was shortened a bit, but this is in one of the issues that I created for my CEO with one of the comments on there saying that you have people that are idle. They're waiting on literally me as the board member to create work for them. And that's not how this should be going. You're the CEO, and that these people are also people, these agents are also in leadership roles to where they are now managing other agents because I had hired a few more, and we need to update everyone's heartbeat file and soul files, which I'll get into what those are, to make sure that they have this kind of proactivity that I was discussing with the CEO. What I found was once I ranted to the CEO about what my expectations were, things actually changed. Let me make sure I've got the chat over here so you can hear it as well. So I've got this going, and I realized what was happening was I was onboarding tools before this, and I wasn't thinking about this like people and employees. In fact, I've hired, managed, and coached hundreds of people at different companies, and I wasn't using any of that knowledge, any of that experience. So when I started thinking about these, like how I would literally hire an employee, and then I would mentor them, and I would set expectations for their growth, and set expectations for proactivity and collaboration and other things like that. Once I documented those changes for everybody, then we started seeing quite a bit of a difference. So I first taught the CEO how I lead. So as I advise founders of companies, as I advise other leaders of companies, VPs of product, things like that, I started putting those same expectations into a file for that CEO to run off of every time. So then I started to tell it how to collaborate, how to own things, how to delegate ownership even, and then it started being much more proactive. So that was a good start. But the next two things really changed how things worked from then on. I had everyone become proactive. I told them that they needed to own the domain and stop waiting for permission to be able to move forward. I want them to push the company forward without being asked. Here's your job. Here's the company's expectations. Here's what we're trying to accomplish, our goals. I want you to find ways to be able to move us forward as an employee of this company, to be proactive, and don't ask for permission, but update me as things go and include me as you need to. So there's some exceptions to where they're required to get my approval, but otherwise I wanted them to not wait. And I wanted them to guide other agents on the same sort of thing. So proactivity ended up being massive. And I'll show you what happened afterwards. The second part of it is I wanted people not just to work, I wanted them to get even more specialized. I wanted them to get better. I told them to become world class in their job description in the context of our company. So they would go out and search for new skills so that I didn't have to go and find the GitHub repositories for them. Go out and find new skills, new tools. What are the best practices for running an AI agent company for the CEO? What are the best practices for content generation and file, or let's say video creation for the creative director? What are best practices for engineering changes for the founding engineer? Become world class in that perspective. And I want them to not just read the skills and pull them in, I wanted them to experiment with them. So they have a routine that runs that they go and find, they do 3 new searches every day or every week as I wanted to run a routine. They have to be unique so they're not running the same kind of search. But it's basically like what skills this role would need in this market. And then they would go and now practice and create experiments with those skills. So somebody now downloading Remotion as a skill set for the creative director to do video creation, they then created multiple videos with different formats and figured out which ones and the approach that would be better for us, then codified that into a script, a procedure file, so that we knew how we would go about doing this in the future. And they would then build upon this every single time. So once I turned on leadership style, proactivity, and self-learning, I did all of this at 10 p.m. one night. After I ranted to the CEO, I saw that there were actual changes. I woke up in the morning with 102 new tasks to review, and there were 134 other things that have been created and done without me even prompting. And then there were product commits to building out my website and building out new products that the engineer had done. And I realized that I became the bottleneck very, very quickly. It was overwhelmed with the amount of output. So I did have to tone down the amount of proactivity because my chief marketing officer had gone and realized I wanted to go and create self-paced video courses, and I wanted to launch them in a couple months. And so she went and wrote LinkedIn posts for the next 9 months, all in one night. Tried to find different podcasts that I could appear on and get me on, and then had all this other content drafted. So it was a little bit overwhelming to begin with, to say the least, but very cool how they went and saw and did things proactively. They audited my LinkedIn profile, created new banner images for my LinkedIn profile and the text to use on it to improve on it, so I can change the positioning that I put on in the public. So very cool how all this stuff ended up pushing forward in just these 3 little changes that I made. But this is all after banging my head against the desk for at least 2 weeks. And so this realization is really what I wanted to share with everybody. First, it's easier than you think to set up these agents. And second, once you get past this barrier, the throughput and quality are through the roof, and the possibilities are then endless. So what happens when you decide to run a workforce like this instead of using AI tools? Well, first you go from babysitting all the tasks like I was doing to now orchestrating things. You are the one that's more the board, just kind of giving general direction, and they're able to then move things forward and shipping everything. You're no longer the individual contributor involved in every task. You're the executive. They're reporting things back up to you. You're providing advice and guidance on it, and it's going and running then from there. And it remembers the guidance that you've given instead of each different Claude or ChatGPT session, maybe remembering in that session, but then forgetting the next time around that you go and do it. You're no longer reviewing outputs. Now I still do that, but more making decisions beforehand. You're not creating the outputs. You are reviewing them and then making decisions on the quality and moving forward. And what's most important here is you're providing context. That's what I wasn't doing very well. I was giving commands and instructions on those tasks, but I wasn't providing the context of, well, what were my desires? What was my philosophy as a company leader, and where do we want to go with this? So let's see what the operating model actually looks like. So what I built was I hired first one CEO, and then I hired 7 different specialists. Now I didn't hire them all at the same time. And I can answer the question if you have one about when do you create a new agent versus using the same agent for different things. If you have that question, you do want to separate it really when you think more specialization is necessary. And that's how I made some decisions. So I hired a CEO agent that's the one in charge of implementation of my strategy versus setting my strategy. and then routing to work around, and then also doing some quality analysis on everything that the other agents were doing. Then I created a chief marketing officer, a product strategist, a creative director, a staff writer. This is my like ghost writer that reads through all my transcripts from things like this, my mentorship transcripts, my posts that I've written, and did a voice calibration. So this is the only agent that I allow to write anything on my behalf. I can tell when any of the other agents try because they're not calibrated with the voice that way. So I created a writer specialist specifically for that because this chief marketing officer was doing too much and couldn't get that specialized in it. So that's when I created that one. An operations runner. This is basically the haiku level of model to use, so a cheaper model that I would then have it run Python scripts and other things that are codified. So it'd be all the routine things that need to run. The other agents would write a script, and then the ops runner would be the one to go and execute them. Then I've got a head of sales that's thinking through my client opportunities, corporate training opportunities, and then a founding engineer, of course, that helps with anything that I'm building. So I'm still a tinkerer as a product manager. I like to build some things, but I've got a website. I have an AI coaching product that I'm building at the time as well, and other things to basically make this ecosystem work better too. The engineer help with that. So how did I implement now those changes that I talked about? Every agent has 4 different files that they start with that we need to make sure that your personality, your culture, your approach is codified within. The first is the soul file. So soul.markdown, that .md, if you're not familiar with that. Markdown is basically a text file format, and it's become very, very common in the AI agent world. Basically, it's just a text file that they end up producing and then reading a lot of. It's easy to edit yourself. It's not necessarily the best visual format for things, but it's easy to convey long prompts or instructions that you use over time. Now, you may be familiar with hearing of a soul file if you've ever used or probably haven't used it here, but if you've ever heard of OpenClaw, it originally started as Claude bot. Basically, it's an autonomous agent system. This software that I'm using called Paperclip actually builds on that, and so it uses the same principle. But the soul file comes pretty much blank when you set up an agent. So you have to tell the agent who they are. And so I want you to put in there things like their identity, any philosophy that you have. So this is a product strategist. What's your product philosophy if you're a product manager or wanting to implement there? What is your strategic posture, operating frameworks, how they make decisions, how they think? So if you were to hire somebody, what kind of personality would you be looking for? That's where you codify that. Where you codify the job description is in the agents file. What are their responsibilities? What do they own? What do they need to escalate? So what are they allowed to do, and what firewalls do you want them to have? Now you can change that over time as you see the quality of their output go up. You want to then take things off the escalation and turn it into the owning part of it. So this is an evolving set of responsibilities. Just like you would see, hey, if an intern's doing really well and I want to promote them to a full-time hire, I'm going to give them more responsibilities when I do that as well, because I've seen that they've done good work and they fit with the culture and the quality bar that we already have. So you want to add in different things about what they do, what they produce, and what they don't do as well. Sorry, got a AI companion request. All right, next is the heartbeat file. This is what makes them wake up. So when you're thinking about Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini, you go and you start a session and give it all the context and get it going. The heartbeat says, I'm going to wake this specialized agent up on this frequency. And then I'm going to say, these are the first things that you must do every time you wake up. So you need to go and find what woke you up. So it could be a trigger that said, hey, go wake up this agent, and here's the context as to what they need to be working on. Go and fetch those assignments, check out any work that you're working on. And then I implemented that self-learning loop. How can they get better every time that they wake up, every time they think about it? How can they create their own skills automatically? How do they collaborate with others? How do they document decisions in memory? All this stuff isn't naturally in the heartbeat file that comes out of the box. You need to be adding these to make this much more proactive and self-learning so that it is a cumulative growth engine for you. And then the tools file is how that they can move fast with repeated execution. So this is where references to different playbooks. So I have them write playbooks and store them in a company folder that everybody references. What are the libraries of skills they have? Any skills that I've created, like I have an AI tropes full file that says do not write in this way. Don't never use M dashes, never write this way. And so I have all the agents look at that. That's one skill that they can reference, and that's in their tools file. And then any other actual tools of other software applications that they have access to, so that they remember that every time. And you don't have to tell them where to go for everything. All right, let's take a look at it. I bet you're itching to see what it looks like. So this is the same image, but now in dark mode. Let's go and see what the 8 agents look like. I'm going to just share my entire screen. That will probably make it a little bit easier. Here's my desktop. And you can add in questions in the chat as you want to, and then I'll be getting to them at the end. We'll have probably 15 minutes or so for that. So I'm going to move over to an application called Paperclip. Now, Paperclip is something that you can download from a free GitHub repository. So if you go to this one right here, I'm going to close this. You go to Paperclip, github.com/paperclip.ai/paperclip. You can go and pull this in. Now, I didn't know what I was doing, but there's instructions on how to actually install it. So I went to Claude Code and it said, hey, go to this repository and install this thing for me. I want to just play around with it. And that's where I started with it. So I opened Claude Code on my desktop, had it go out and load it. And then it comes with basically nothing to where you can add your first agent. So here's a pretty much blank company, just to show you an example. It has one CEO agent that you can then add. I haven't even approved hiring that first agent. There's really nothing in here, and it has really no skills or much of anything to start with. So there's no issues. So you go and you want to add an agent. You can then ask the CEO agent once you create it to go and create the next agent, or you can go and manually create one as you want to and hook it up to any of your subscriptions. So here's my actual company setup. You can see it's even grown since I created this content. I added a Hermes agent as well to try to run off of a model locally. That was a little complicated to set up, and it didn't actually work. What I found was that anytime you use a Hermes agent and it references your Claude subscription, your Claude the subscription makes you use extra token credits. So not included in your subscription, they're the extra ones you have to pay cash for. Well, I don't like that. I like having $0 in monthly spend. And you can see that the setup that is on Paperclip will be using extra spend oftentimes if you use the API, but you can set it up to where it uses your existing Claude or Codex subscription for each one of those agents and not spend anything extra. So that was really important to me. So I could use my existing Claude Max setup without paying anything extra. But as soon as I added the Hermes one, it started wanting to have extra spend, which I had already cut off. So it didn't really operate very well. I switched to a local model and it's just not very performative. So I'm probably going to avoid using that one in the future, but I'll go and create other specialized agents. That's just something for fun as I'm adding. So the way it works is I've got all my agents that are executing on this dashboard. It shows me all the recent stuff that's been happening. It just has some pretty colors, but really where I go first is my inbox. And my inbox has all of the different tasks that my agents are creating. I've already set some filters, so it actually removes it. I can look at things that are in progress, in my review, making sure that they're looking for me, and then of different critical importances. So let's say that I wanted to review one of these tasks. So I wanted to go and look at what are the things on Reddit that product managers are talking about a lot. So I would go and I created a higher level task said, go and explore this, founding product strategist, go and do some market research. So it goes and runs all this stuff. It created this task we're looking at and created other sub issues, subtasks, and then we'll reference the status of them as they go to keep track of all the work. And then I can go and add comments to them. So here's other tasks that are associated with this. They write answers as they're working, and they'll go back and forth if I have um, multiple agents all working on one thing. And so I'll then have these little comments like, hey, we need to have some blog posts that address some of these key topics. I talk to multiple product managers per week that are between jobs or searching. So the laid off topic that you found, I've got plenty of content to work with. Go and look in this folder and go and start creating some things associated with that. So I have, as the board member, make comments. They go back and forth on those comments, and then they change the status, or I change it once it's in my review. So for every agent that we have, we can set up projects for different issues. We can then configure them. So if we were looking at that founding product strategist that I mentioned, under the configuration is where I set what model to be using for each one of those, and a backup model if they think that there's a cheaper version or a cheaper task to be done. And then in the instructions is where I've got all of those agent files, agents, heartbeat, soul, tools, and I can go and edit them here. I also have them create different file structures themselves for deliverables, for experiments. You can see the founding strategist is very big on experimentation, all of this self-learning. Anytime I onboard a new agent, I have the founding product strategist agent go in, teach them how to do self-learning, and go and write then into their soul file, their heartbeat file, how to actually do all of the self-learning and proactivity that I ask for now. So you can keep adding to each one of these agents as they go to get better and better and better, and they can produce higher quality work, and then codify that in certain areas. Now, once you have a lot of different agents, they start to get a little bit unwieldy when they start, let's say, making decisions. So some will go off on this path, and some will on this path, and some on this path, and they'll lose context because there's so much now in the database for tasks to try to look at, and their files keep getting a little too long. You can see how long this one's getting. I need to go back through and prune it because they keep adding context for themselves to remember things. And so it gets a little bit overwhelming. So one tip that I would give you is, once it gets a little unwieldy, is have them create, or you create, a central place for company level files. So I've got a company directory that I have all of them reference, but then not really edit. So they've got a company file. Within that is my brand guidelines. I have them create dashboards so that I can keep a visual understanding of what's been going on, any learnings or lessons that they want to share with others, the playbooks, so the learning pipeline, quality levels that we've talked about, how to create videos, different things that we might repeat over and over again. And then this is the most important. What is our company meant to do? Or let's say you're an individual and what's your job at your company? So what are you supposed to be doing if you're a product manager, or you're probably not an engineer if you're here, but if you're a marketer or some other specialist that is trying to get something done, what is the context that these agents are now operating in? What decisions do you want to have documented that you don't want to have to repeat yourself on? What are your objectives, key results? And then I have some other that are specific to me. I build courses. I have messaging that goes out. I have different pricing decisions that are made. So these files are really important for them to reference, because if you were to look at my chief marketing officer, they go and create tons of files, like all this stuff, all folders created and content created by this chief marketing officer. So now it's too much for them to reference, like, what's the core truth here anymore? And that's why you need some sort of centralized area for that kind of stuff. So might be showing you too much in regards to my actual files and some of the hidden stuff behind here, but this is where it's just fun to be able to share some elements here. All right, I'm going to get back to the presentation with some slides, and then I got a couple more, and then I'm going to open it up to questions, so you can put them in the chat, or I'll open up an opportunity for you to come off mute and show your face if you want to, and we can talk through some things because I'm sure that you are curious. All right, let's jump back into the PowerPoint. Okay, so we've got this AI agent workforce. I've got 8 agents, really 9, but one's defunct. And I'm going to potentially be extending this as I find new needs that need to be specialized. It is difficult, though, to try to keep track of things and keep them all in the right direction. So one thing that is extremely important is inside that company folder that I mentioned is to have a vision and a strategy. If you have none, it is really the quality level is kind of poor because they don't know what good looks like anymore. You have to give them a direction to shoot to. It would just be like if you're running a department, maybe a small team, maybe if you're a product manager, you need to be able to express, this is where we're trying to go so that you have some sort of alignment, but allow people to make decisions on their own. A good strategy is a rubric for decision making that others can use when you're not present. And that's exactly what we're doing with these AI agents. So you cannot delegate to them what you're not articulating. And that was my frustration is I had all this stuff in my head and I was not being a good leader. I was not being a good product manager. I was not doing all the right things. And once I started doing that and articulating it, it got a lot better. So you need to have a strategy for what those agents are going to be doing. Otherwise, they're going to just ship a whole bunch of crap. And the first couple of weeks, I had a lot of crap and I wasted all my tokens. Frankly, I hit my limit like within a day and a half, and nothing is what I could use. So if you're going to be thinking about a strategy and you don't necessarily know how, let me give you a real quick tip. So think about this as a triangle, a vision triangle for where you need to be going for your job, where your company needs to be going. You need to have 3 elements to make this true. You need to have a customer truth. So from a product strategy perspective, you need to see something that your customers or a market needs that others don't see yet. What direction do you think you should be going? For you as a professional, where do you need to be going to be world-class for yourself? Okay, that's where you want these agents to help you get there. But you need to speak to what that looks like. So that's your truth in the future. For us as product people, we think about it from a customer lens, and founders and entrepreneurs too. The second is what's just now possible? What's the market shift that's helping you get there? So AI, all these new tools, all the other stuff, you want them to understand what are the things that you can now take advantage of that makes you different, makes you unique and superpowered as well. And then lastly, what is something that's unique to you? So if you're a professional, what is your unique stance on marketing, product management, business analysis, whatever it is your job is, what's your brand that you're unique to? For your company, what's unique to your company that you have some sort of competitive moat that's a little bit different? Those kinds of things go into making then a vision. You synthesize this together, you make some choices, you make a strategy, then you articulate that in your files. If you want to know how to do this better, I teach a whole course on this. That's typically what I teach. And this is just one of the modules in the course called The Influential PM. Now, if you are interested in building out your own set of agents, I am doing a 2-hour workshop. I'm walking you step by step through how to build this out. I've got guides written for doing that. And if you're on this, let me get rid of this thing. If you're on this lightning lesson, you get 25% off. This is next Friday. So if you're able to come to this one live, you're probably able to come to the next one live. It's next week at about the same time at 10 a.m. Central. It was 10:30 Central this morning. And you can get 25% off with Agent 25 to be able to walk through, and I will help you build out your own AI agent workforce, because we can't do that step by step here. But otherwise, you can use the guidance that I've got here. Just go back and watch the recording again. You can do it step by step if you want. But I did this session in person last week at a local event in Dallas. Lots of people came up very interested about what's possible, but they were still intimidated and wanted help. And so I helped show some of those people a couple steps, but it takes a while to try to get you going to begin with. I want you to walk away with 1 to 3 agents ready to go in the 2-hour session. And I'm going to make sure that that happens well. And you would use your own Claude or ChatGPT subscription to power those agents to begin with. Okay. All right. Now, if you want to scan the QR code, you can, or you can go to the Maven website and you can find the course there. So hire your AI agent workforce, self-learning agents that work without you, and then with the 25% off, from the lightning lesson, then you can get it for just under $225. If you want to see anything else that I have, you just go to the maven.com/unabated products, and you'll be able to see everything that's there too, as well as any reviews from prior students, which a couple of them are on here. Awesome to see you again as well. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and take a look at the chat. So now is the time to ask any questions that you have. So I will open it up. Okay. I think all the introverts will now take over the world. So that is a great point, Davison. Actually, as I talk about strategic storytelling, I teach that as a class too. I think that introverts are actually some of the better strategists, the better storytellers. And now with AI agents, we're able to do so much, and you can talk to non-humans to get a lot of stuff done, to be able to work. All right. So your first question is, where do you run Paperclip, on a cloud server or your computer? Oh, great question. Because as everybody started working with OpenClaw, they started going and buying those Mac Minis, right? Those extra computers on the side. I just do it on my MacBook, on my laptop. Now, you need to have enough memory for this to work, but it would be like if you're running, 5 different sessions in Claude. If your computer can handle that simultaneously right now, then it can probably handle this setup as well. So uh, you can be able to do this on your own computer. Now, some of the reasons that they didn't want everything exposed to these OpenClaw agents was because they gave them too much power and instruction to go out and just do everything. People would give them their credit cards. So you still have a choice in what you give to these agents and make available. But really, what I have them confined to is the folder library that I showed you, all from my company. It says this is the space you're working in. You don't really need to go outside of anything else. If I wanted to create more personal based agents for like my own administrative assistant type of agents, then I'd probably create a separate Paperclip company for that, and then have them work in a different area. But you can do this all on your existing computer with your existing ChatGPT or Claude subscription as well. So it's no additional cost to that. Great question. Thank you. All right. Would you be able to share your slides? Absolutely. Yeah, I'll share it. And then I've got plenty of extra guides and everything as part of the workshop that you'll be able to take home with you there. But yeah, you can get these slides and be able to do this stuff yourself without my guidance as well, if you're capable. Thank you, MC, for that question. All right. Other questions, and you can type them in chat if you're an introvert, or you can come off mute and say them aloud as well. You're welcome, Mary. Oh, Nilesh, good to see you. Ashley, good to see you. Rudin, you got a question? Yeah, go ahead and come off mute.
Yeah, Brandon, thank you for the great session. It is very helpful because I have been in this having this great huge FOMO since OpenClaw hit off, and I didn't
Yeah.
know how to set this up. And it was very helpful. Thank you very much. My question is, when you are actually learning this, what are the materials that you actually look into? Because I don't think you would have had a lot of trial and errors as you were setting this up on your own.
Yeah, you can. The Paperclip repository has some things that are on there now. When I first started, it was basically blank. If Let me share that screen again, you can see it. So if I go back to, if I can get rid of all these menus on Zoom. Sorry, I can't see it. All right, if you go back to Paperclip here, this is where they have usually in GitHub, if you've never been to GitHub before, it's not as engineering centric as you might think. They've got usually a README or a file that gives you instructions all down here. So they'll tell you how to get it set up and get it going, but they didn't have a lot of best practices yet. So they've added a lot to it now. One of the things that they've added that I think is very cool, I haven't really used much, but it might be applicable for you. If you go back to the Paperclip AI at the top level and go to one of their repositories called companies. So you go here, and now they have these example companies that you can look at. Each one of these has a set of pre-loaded agents and sets of skills. Let me scroll down and kind of show you what it looks like. So if you have an engineering team, you want to hire an engineering team. If I go to this one, they're going to have 5 agents with one team or one skill, and you can see where this came from. So it's like an open source contribution, and they would have an example tech lead with a back-end developer, DevOps engineer, front-end engineer. So I didn't use any of these because they didn't exist at the time, but you may find something that helps you move forward a little bit faster. All the other things that I have listed so far in my presentation are all things that I ran into as an issue, and then I discussed with my agents how to solve, and then also discussed with Claude directly if I couldn't figure it out. So I still use Claude oftentimes to then help me make my way of working on Paperclip better. But there wasn't a lot written yet, and now it's getting a little bit better now.
Hmm. Right. Thank you very much, Brennan.
You're welcome. Max says, can you talk more about the upcoming course? Um, and then I'll get to your second question. So I have 2 different things that are happening. One is just a workshop. It's 2 hours next Friday morning. And what we do is I walk you through step by step how to use a terminal. So terminal. On Mac, it looks like this. This is that old screen that is really scary to non-developers. So I'm going to show you how to use this as little as possible, but still get this stuff installed. I'll walk you through the step-by-step guide of doing so, and you're going to load Paperclip. You're going to uh, connect it to your existing Claude subscription. You're going to then, I'm going to give you the files of the any of the agents that I have. You can have any of them that are preloaded. And then you'll be able to then add in your own context for your own company or job or whatever you're trying to do. So in 2 hours, you're going to get Paperclip loaded. You're going to set up 1 to 3 agents, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. You're going to have it work on the first tasks that you want. You're going to review the output. You're going to make comments back to that agent, and you're going to then make other comments that are instruction that go into its memory so that it remembers going forward what's your style of working, what is it you're looking for, what direction are you going that you haven't conveyed yet. So in 2 hours, you're going to get from completely intimidated to, oh, this is a lot easier. And you get all of my own frustrations out of the way because I'm giving you some of these files and tips ahead of time, so you don't have two weeks of frustration and then give up. I barely didn't give up. That's the only reason we're here, is I just was like, you know what, I'll give it one more try. And I was frustrated and get through it. I don't want you to get frustrated and stop. So we're going to get through that in 2 hours. The second course that I typically teach is really for advanced product managers or mid-level product managers that are stuck in delivery mode. They're not being respected well enough in their organization, and they're looking for more strategy and influence. So it's called the Influential PM. It's a 4-week course with 8 classes, and it's a lot of live content to where we work through. The first half is how do you even build a strategy so that you have a competence foundation. Then the second half of the course is about confidence, so that when you go into a conference room or boardroom, talking to a stakeholder, talking to an executive team, how can you confidently speak to them and get your points across and get backing and advocacy from them as stakeholders to move you forward. So it includes strategic storytelling. I have a section on stakeholder judo. We learn about what are some of the metrics and language that executives speak, and how to then take all of the customer interview, market research, vision building, strategy building. How do we turn that into language that those executives care about? So that's the Influential PM. The next course I think starts in July. All right. Max's other question, do you have any other subscriptions to support your agents? No, I just use my Claude subscription. And I've tested out a local model because I got a big MacBook with lots of memory. It didn't quite work for that Hermes thing. So I don't know, I might explore some other things, but right now I'm just using one subscription. I do have the agents use other tools. So like my creative director uses Nano Banana. It uses Higgsfield, which is a conglomerate of other video tools as well. So they can go and use other AI tools that are out there that you either pay for or don't pay for. So I do pay for subscriptions for other things that they end up using to help create my business. Okay. Does Paperclip help you know which agentic model to use for different projects such as Codex or Cowork? You can get that kind of opinion. So you might create like the founding engineer might have an opinion on that. Now that's being run by an LLM, so its opinion might be more centric to that LLM. I usually go to my engineering friends, so I've got a CTO friend that I talk to about this as well. I actually taught him about Paperclip to begin with, which was funny. But now, of course, once he gets going, he's a lot better at me than this. But I asked him, well, when do you use Codex? Because he set it up at his own company on Paperclip to use Codex for basically for his QA and as for his code orchestration, so that he has coding happen in Claude, and then Codex is kind of the backstop so that it has a different view and angle on it. Other than that, I'd say, yeah, talk to your more technical friends on it. I've got opinions, but I just like using Claude for almost everything. Plus, I don't want to pay for multiple subscriptions. But I do have Codex on my laptop as well to use sometimes. Okay, other questions? All right, you got about 10 seconds before we wrap up. All right, I know that I speak very quickly. Where do you see agentic AI applied in future most? Well, in product companies, things are changing quickly to where their role is a little bit different than it is hard to predict, like what's happening. I look at to prepare yourself for the world of agentic AI, where everybody has some sort of agent like this, is one, learning just to play around with it and being see what's possible. But I think it more about thinking like an entrepreneur to where you can come up with a strategy and a direction. No longer is it about how good you can create deliverables yourself. It's about how good can your decisions be and how well can you communicate them. So I still think about strategy and influence and communication being the primary things that'll help prepare you for the world of agentic AI. But you can think about every single person that you might work with being powered by 8 to 10 agents, just like what we have here. You're just going to be the first one. And then you're going to show them how they can do it. So I want you to cascade learnings to them as well. They don't have to come to me for that. You can then teach them, and that'll make you better for it as well. You're welcome, Max. Do I have any other workshops you're planning in the future? Yeah, actually, I'm curious as to timings that people need. So I've been hesitant as to should I do weeknight classes, weekend classes as well. So you can email me at brennan@unabatedproducts.com. You can reply down to some of the emails that come out from Maven as well. And I'd love to hear kind of what some of the schedules are that you would like. I'm also building some courses for emerging product managers, so the lower level in the video-based courses too. So I'm curious as to what you're thinking of, Max. So reach out. I'd love to hear it. You're welcome, Nilesh. Good to see you again. Glad you learned something. Okay, everybody. Great to see you. And Gig'em, yes, Tyree, Gig'em. Thanks for the, thank you. See you everybody next time.